Well, that was quick. They called her lawyer broke.
Was there a coordinated smear campaign to bring down Blake Lively?
100% no.
You plan to sue Blake Lively?
Absolutely.
You will?
Yes. We plan to release every single text messages between the two of them. We want the truth to be out there. We want the documents to be out there. We want people to make their determination based on receipts.
Justin Baldoni, the director of It Ends With Us, is getting dragged hard with some jaw-dropping accusations. But here's the kicker. These allegations didn't even come from Blake Lively's lawyers this time. Nope, they came from actress Isabela Ferrer. And if you read between the lines, you can see Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' fingerprints all over this fiery 26-page legal bombshell. Ferrer is accusing Baldoni of harassment, intimidation, and even something as serious as quid pro quo, the same term usually thrown around in corruption cases. Sounds wild, right? But here's the twist nobody's talking about. The subpoena Ferrer is fighting didn't even come from Baldoni. It came straight from Wayfair Studios, the company behind the movie. Baldoni is just one of several partners there, yet page after page of Ferrer's filing singles him out while completely ignoring Wayfair and its big money owners. Why would she do that? Simple. The language in her filing reads almost identical to Blake Lively's legal tactics. Remember, Ferrer already cooperated with Lively's subpoena. She handed over texts, emails, and whatever Blake's team wanted without complaint. But suddenly, when it's Baldoni and Wayfair knocking on the door with basically the same requests, Ferrer flips the script. Now she's playing the victim of a so-called harassment campaign. Coincidence? Not even close. Behind the scenes, Blake and Ryan have been accused of love-bombing Ferrer, showering her with premiere invites, designer outfits, and elite Hollywood access. And now her legal filing looks like it was copy-pasted out of Blake's playbook. Let's break down that quid pro quo mess. Ferrer's lawyer is claiming Baldoni tried to pressure her into accepting the subpoena by tying it to her legal protections. Sounds shady, until you look at the actual facts. Ferrer's contract with Wayfair included indemnification, meaning the studio covers her legal fees if she gets dragged into lawsuits connected to the film. Totally normal in Hollywood. But here's the catch. Ferrer didn't want Wayfair's lawyers handling her case. She wanted her own. When her attorney refused to accept the subpoena, Wayfair's team pushed back. That's not harassment. That's literally how contracts and subpoenas work. But Ferrer and her lawyer twisted it, repeating quid pro quo like they were trying to plant headlines instead of arguing law. And the kicker? There's zero evidence Baldoni ever spoke directly to Ferrer about this. It was all lawyer-to-lawyer talk. No threats, no bribes, no harassment. So why is Baldoni suddenly being painted like some predator? Because that's the narrative Blake Lively has been running with from the jump. Lively's team accused Baldoni of the exact same thing just weeks ago in a different case. And now, magically, Ferrer is parroting the same claims. Please, that's not coincidence. That's strategy. This is textbook smear campaign. Blake and Ryan are clearly using Ferrer as their pawn, flipping a routine subpoena into a headline-grabbing scandal to drag Baldoni's name through the dirt while they keep their own hands looking squeaky clean. But here's where Ferrer's story really cracks wide open. When Blake subpoenaed her, she didn't complain. She didn't call it harassment. She didn't cry intimidation. She just handed over the receipts. But when Baldoni's team hit her with an almost identical subpoena, suddenly it's harassment and intimidation, same requests, same legal process, totally different reactions. And why? Loyalty. Blake pulled Ferrer deep into her orbit. She didn't just treat her like a co-star, she love-bombed her. We're talking red carpet invites, designer styling, Hollywood introductions, even cozy appearances at Blake's hair care brand launch. She flew Ferrer to Deadpool premieres, made sure she got photographed, whispered wild stories about Taylor Swift being tied to casting, which Taylor flat out denied ever happening, and basically gave her a crash course in A-list privilege. That's not friendship, that's strategy. By flooding a young actress with access, status, and superstar connections, Blake and Ryan locked in Ferrer's loyalty. So when the legal battle started heating up, Ferrer had already picked her side. And surprise, surprise, she's echoing Blake's narrative, word for word. The double standard is screaming loud here. If Blake's subpoena was just business, then why is Baldoni's subpoena suddenly a human rights violation? Why single out Justin while letting Wayfair's other execs skate free? Because Blake and Ryan don't care about fairness. They want the spotlight squarely on Baldoni. This isn't justice. It's a power move dressed up as a lawsuit. Ferrer barely even worked with Baldoni on set. She was there for just a handful of days. But with Blake, totally different story. Blake rolled out the Hollywood red carpet for her and made sure Ferrer felt like she owed her everything. Now, Ferrer's filings read like they were drafted in Blake's PR war room, not a lawyer's office. At the end of the day, this whole thing reeks of manipulation. Ferrer isn't standing up against harassment. She's carrying out Blake and Ryan's personal vendetta against Justin Baldoni. And it worked. Big time! Isabela Ferrer's legal filings don't just resemble Blake's playbook, they mirror it word for word. The same buzzwords keep popping up. Harassment, intimidation, quid pro quo, like someone just hit copy and paste straight out of Blake Lively's legal drafts. And here's what makes it even more obvious. Ferrer never accuses Blake of harassment, even though Blake's subpoena was almost identical to Baldoni's. Instead, she saves all her venom for Justin. That's not coincidence. That's orchestration. Blake and Ryan are straight up weaponizing a young actress, turning Ferrer into their mouthpiece to smear Baldoni's name and paint him as some kind of predator. Hollywood glitz on the outside, manipulation on the inside. But strip away the dramatic headlines and look at this legally. Ferrer's whole case falls apart fast. A subpoena isn't optional, it's a court order. When you're subpoenaed, you either comply or you file a motion to quash. That's it. There's no middle ground where you can cry intimidation just because you don't like who's serving it. Ferrer's motion tries to spin Baldoni's subpoena as harassment, but courts have already ruled that witnesses can be subpoenaed multiple times, even if the requests overlap. Baldoni asking for the same documents Blake already asked for isn't harassment. It's called discovery, and discovery is literally the backbone of every lawsuit. And here's the kicker. Ferrer openly admits she's a witness. She was on set. She had contact with cast. She even participated in promotion. That makes her testimony relevant. Judges have already forced other witnesses in this exact case to comply, even when they whined about it. So why should Ferrer get special treatment? Then there's her quid pro quo claim. Ferrer says Baldoni tried to tie her subpoena compliance to indemnification protections. Sounds spicy, until you read the actual emails. They show routine back and forth between lawyers. No threats, no bribery, no harassment, just standard contract talk. But Ferrer's team twisted it into a scandal, repeating quid pro quo like it was a TikTok soundbite meant to trend, not a serious legal argument. At the end of the day, judges don't fall for Hollywood theatrics. They care about contracts, evidence, and the law. And on those fronts, Ferrer, Blake, and Ryan are standing on quicksand. But here's where it gets slick. This fight isn't just happening in court. Blake and Ryan know how to weaponize the media, and Ferrer's filing became the perfect tool. Within days of her motion hitting the docket, outlets like US Weekly were blasting out stories with headlines screaming, "Director harasses young actress, predator tactics, intimidation campaign." But guess what those headlines left out? The subpoena wasn't even from Baldoni. It came from Wayfair Studios. Baldoni is just one of several partners at that company, yet somehow he's the only name being dragged across the tabloids. Accident? Not a chance. That's PR chess, and Blake and Ryan have always been pros at playing the media. Ryan cracks witty headlines like it's second nature. Blake thrives on her America's sweetheart image. Together, they've turned Ferrer's filing into a ready-made scandal, painting Baldoni as the monster while they look squeaky clean. Here's the real game. They don't need to win in court if they can crush Baldoni in the court of public opinion. Ferrer's buzzword-filled filing wasn't built for judges. It was built for journalists. Words like quid pro quo, harassment, and intimidation weren't legal points. They were clickbait bait. Suddenly, Justin Baldoni isn't being described as the director who fought to adapt a best-selling novel. He's being branded as the predator filmmaker harassing a young actress. Exactly the storyline Blake and Ryan wanted the press to run with. But here's what the press won't tell you. Baldoni never threatened Ferrer. He never bribed her. He never even spoke to her directly. The so-called harassment exists only in the imagination of Blake's legal team. This isn't journalism. This is spin. And Blake and Ryan are pulling the strings like seasoned puppeteers. So the question is, why? Why are Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds so hell-bent on tearing Justin Baldoni down when the filings show no hard evidence of harassment? The answer is power, control, and protecting their golden image. From the moment It Ends With Us started filming, Blake and Ryan positioned themselves as Hollywood royalty swooping into a smaller production. But here's the part they didn't like. Baldoni wasn't some pushover director. He secured the rights to the book, built the project from scratch, and held real creative control. That did not sit well with Blake, an actress used to being the loudest voice in the room and running the spotlight her way. Insiders say she butted heads with Baldoni on set, constantly undermining his authority and trying to control the narrative. And then came the subpoenas. When creators and insiders started leaking uncomfortable truths about Blake's behind-the-scenes behavior, she panicked, and who became the #1 target? Justin Baldoni. Why? Because if she can paint him as the manipulator, the predator, the villain, then she keeps her America's Golden Girl crown polished, while Ryan plays the charming sidekick. And let's not act brand new here. Ryan Reynolds already has a history of cutting slick backroom deals to protect his empire. This is just another Hollywood power play. But this time, Baldoni's the one in their crosshairs. Reports have now surfaced claiming Ryan Reynolds once pulled a shady quid pro quo with Vancouver police, allegedly pressuring them to pursue arrests in exchange for favors. And suddenly, the exact same language shows up in Isabela Ferrer's filing against Justin Baldoni. Coincidence? Or recycled tactics straight out of Ryan's old playbook? Let's be real. This isn't about justice. This is about Hollywood power players protecting their image, even if it means torching someone else's career in the process. And when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it becomes painfully obvious. Isabela Ferrer isn't the mastermind here. She's the pawn. Ferrer is young, fresh in Hollywood, still climbing the ladder. She only spent a handful of days on the It Ends With Us set. Her interactions with Baldoni, limited, professional, and by her own admission, polite. She even sent him a kind thank you text after filming wrapped. No allegations of harassment back then. No complaints. Nothing but gratitude. So what changed? Blake Lively happened. Blake swept Ferrer right into her glamorous world. Deadpool premieres, luxury red carpets, private styling sessions, A-list events, even whispered promises of insider connections. For a newcomer, that kind of access is intoxicating. Who wouldn't be dazzled by Hollywood royalty opening doors? But behind all that glitter was a calculated motive. By love-bombing Ferrer with non-stop attention, Blake locked in her loyalty. So when legal trouble hit, Ferrer wasn't just standing by Blake, she was standing against Baldoni. Now, Ferrer's legal filings don't sound like a nervous young actress at all. They sound like Blake Lively's lawyers speaking through her mouthpiece. The non-stop repetition of quid pro quo, the framing of Baldoni as a predator, the one-sided targeting that conveniently ignores Wayfair's other executives, that's not Ferrer's voice. That's Blake and Ryan's narrative written in neon. The saddest part, Ferrer probably doesn't even realize she's being used. To her, this feels like loyalty to Blake and Ryan, but in reality, it's strategy. If Ferrer plays the victim, the public automatically sees Baldoni as the aggressor. Classic Hollywood move: protect the stars, sacrifice the supporting players, and spin the story until the truth is completely unrecognizable. But here's the harsh truth Blake and Ryan don't want the world to know. Judges don't play games with emotional buzzwords. They deal in cold, hard facts. And the facts show that Ferrer's case against Baldoni doesn't stand a chance. For weeks, her lawyers have argued that Baldoni's subpoena equals harassment. But this same judge has already forced other witnesses to comply with nearly identical subpoenas. Why? Because discovery isn't harassment, it's the law. Every party in a lawsuit has the right to request evidence. Legal experts who've looked at Ferrer's filing have already said the same thing. It's heavy on dramatic language, but short on substance. Words like intimidation and quid pro quo sound explosive. But when the court looks at the actual emails, they're nothing but standard lawyer negotiations. No threats, no extortion, no harassment, just attorneys doing what attorneys do. And let's not forget, so far, this judge hasn't sanctioned anyone in the case, even when asked. The idea that he'd suddenly punish Baldoni over a standard subpoena, extremely unlikely. Which means Ferrer's motion isn't about winning in court, it's about generating headlines. And that's where Blake and Ryan's little strategy starts to crack. They can flood the press with smear campaigns. They can spin tabloids into printing hit pieces. But inside a courtroom, none of that matters. Judges don't care about PR. They care about procedure. And on that front, Baldoni's standing on solid ground, while Ferrer, and by extension Blake and Ryan, are sinking in quicksand. This case won't collapse because of Ferrer's accusations. If anything, it's exposing just how desperate Blake and Ryan are to keep their narrative alive. When you pull back and look at the whole thing, the pattern is undeniable. Blake and Ryan turned a simple legal process into a full-blown Hollywood smear war. They weaponized a young actress. They twisted ordinary subpoenas into clickbait headlines about harassment. They recycled the same quid pro quo buzzwords over and over, hoping that if they repeated it enough, the world would just believe it. And the press ran with their script. Baldoni the predator, Blake the victim, Ryan the charming protector. But now, the cracks are showing. The court isn't buying the theatrics. Legal experts aren't fooled by the recycled buzzwords, and even fans are starting to call out the hypocrisy. Why did Ferrer happily comply with Blake's subpoena, but fight tooth and nail against Baldoni's identical one? The double standard is loud, the manipulation is clear, and the truth, Justin Baldoni isn't the villain here. He's the target. Blake and Ryan know that if they can destroy him, they can rewrite the entire story of It Ends With Us, a story they want total control over. This isn't about justice. This is about power, image, and two Hollywood stars willing to sacrifice anyone to protect their empire. So where does this battle go next? That's up to the court. But one thing is crystal clear. Every single move Blake and Ryan make only exposes how far they're willing to go to bury Baldoni. And now, the world is finally starting to see it for what it is. If you want the truth about this Hollywood scandal, the truth mainstream press won't tell you. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. This fight is just getting started.